When time feels invisible, the answer isn't more discipline, it's more support. Plan for those buffers. Pairing time with an action. Welcome to N.E.T Collective, where we navigate everything together from classroom
to college
to careers and beyond. I'm Kay McBroody, career coach and founder of Waterville Partners.
I'm Vanita Patel, school psychologist in private practice.
I'm Ruth Hayes, education professional and founder of Full CO Prep.
N.E.T Collective, navigating everything together, one conversation at a time. Hi, guys.
Hey, hi.
How you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome. Well, I think it's about time we talk about time.
Wordplay.
So what are we going to talk about relative to time?
Okay, so let me ask you, Kay. Have you ever looked at the clock and thought, how did it get so late? And then find yourself in a bit of a panic because you didn't get the things done that you thought you could get done?
No, never.
Never. Doesn't sound like you.
Okay, yes, I have.
What about you, Ruth?
Oh, yeah.
That happens. And we all do that. That's really in and of itself. That happens once in a while. Busy days, they happen. That's not a big deal, right? But for many of us, that tends to become a pattern where we don't see time as something that is important and urgent, okay? So before we talk about what that really looks like in real life, let's talk about time as a concept. And I don't want to get too nerdy here, but time is sort of a concept. What's that?
Let's nerd out.
Let's nerd out. Let's nerd out about time. I mean, how nerdy can you really get when you're talking about time? But yeah, time, it's a conceptual phenomenon, right? So much of what we do is tied to time, okay? Like, how long will it take me to get there? How long is this episode? How long will it take for me to write this essay? Or how many more days until we leave for vacation, right?
How many times can I hit the snooze button?
That's right.
And still make my morning routine.
Exactly. And not miss the bus. And, if I do miss the bus, then I'll get in trouble from my parents because they will have to rearrange their schedule, So much of our daily activities are tied to how long something will take, when do we start, when do we end, etc., right?
Absolutely.
So many of us can estimate how long things will take us, right? For many others, they suffer from what's called time blindness.
What's that?
Okay, so time blindness. And by the way, if you suffer from time blindness or experience time blindness regularly and it becomes a pattern, it's hard for you to manage time. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Time blindness and then what to do about it and manage your time. Okay? So you ask, what is time blindness? Time blindness refers to the difficulty predicting how long something will take you. Sensing time is really not on your radar. Thinking about time is not on your radar. And if you can't do that, it makes it very difficult to plan things, to pace yourself, right? To allot the correct enough amount of time to start a task, to do a task, and to follow through with something.
So for example, I'm thinking of some of the audience might have a student or student might be in the audience where they have different assignments that they have to get done. Mm-hmm. And they might think, oh, yeah, that only takes 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. Or it's on the other side, it's a big project and they're like, oh, it's not due for a week.
Yes.
And they don't break it into small pieces and they just think they can slam it in at the end. Are these real examples?
These are real examples.
Okay.
These are absolutely real examples. And what you're kind of alluding to is that time urgency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we all should have a healthy concept of time urgency, not urgency in a way where it's going to give you anxiety. Although I have to tell you, a little bit of anxiety is a good motivator. But I'm talking about people who experience time blindness as a pattern. And regularly, they tend to lack that sense of time urgency that is the enough amount of urgency to get you to do something, to get you to initiate that task.
Is there a way to tell if you might be susceptible to this or if you you know someone who is, like, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, before we get into what we can do about it, there are a couple things that I do want to just make sure I say. It's not because of laziness. It's not because you don't care about the task.
Right.
You know, many people will interpret it that way, like your mom or, you know, a teacher or your boss. Like, you really don't care about this project that you've got to do because otherwise you would have just done it and you would have just done it on time. You know, maybe sometimes you don't care about it or you don't give it the importance. But oftentimes it's not because you lack the discipline or you lack the motivation or you don't care about it. It's because you don't have that sense of urgency and that time as a concept, that it is important and that it does matter. Okay?
Got it.
And hence you know, experience this phenomenon called time blindness. Okay? And I guess one visual, if I can give you, it's imagine if there's music playing in the other room, okay? And it's quiet. It's like maybe a little whisper. You know it's there, but you don't really hear it. You don't know what song is playing, okay? So technically it's there, but the signal is weak. And it's easy to miss unless something suddenly turns up the volume on full blast. And then you're shocked with this, oh my gosh, that song, you know?
Right.
That's an analogy for how people with time blindness may experience, you know, so like time is a little bit of a whisper until it's really loud and in your face and you've missed a deadline or you're nearing the 12th hour and then panic sets in because, you know, you're about to miss, you know, a serious time deadline.
Okay.
I like the idea of time as a signal. I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Yeah. It's a signal that can really help motivate us to take that next step if you're aware of it. Okay. So then, and it also, time blindness can fuel procrastination, right? And we know that procrastination, which we will have an episode on, but we can put that off. Okay, my kids are listening to this. Sorry. I know that was a cringy joke by your mom. But anyway, yes. So time blindness can really impact procrastination. And we know that procrastination can also become an emotional thing, which, you know, that is an upcoming episode. So since for people that experience time blindness, since time is more of a distant whisper and not urgent to them, we have to try to make time more predictable. Okay. And there are things that we can do about that.
And so where are some ways that unpredictability shows up before we get into that?
Okay. So like real life, like what does
like
it really
examples.
look like? Yeah, great. So people with time blindness tend to overbook themselves, you know, and not realize that, you know, or maybe there's an overlap. You know, if something ends at 5 o'clock, you probably don't want to set the next thing for 5 o'clock because there needs to be kind of like a transition time, right? Okay. Also, you tend to, people with time blindness tend to either underestimate how long something will take them or overestimate something, you know, how long something will take them. So oftentimes in my practice, I see students who will say to me, you know, I thought I was doing really well on this test. And then the teacher said 5 minutes left, and I still had like 25% left to go. So they didn't really budget the time properly. You know, they got really stuck on, say, you know, problem 5 and 6, and then forgot that you've got to go all the way to 10, and now you still have half the test to do with a little bit of time left. You know, so they underestimated how long the entire test would take them.
So it sounds like there are a lot of different skills involved here, right? Because you have to be organized and make sure that you're planning out the future properly. It's about perception. It's about being able to understand what's happening in the moment and be sensitive to it. Anything else that goes into it?
Yeah. Well, and you're absolutely right about that because time management is an executive functioning skill, right?
Yeah.
And what we do know about our executive function skills, we talked about organization last time. We're going to talk about the other skills. It's a system and all of these skills work together. So to your point about, you know, time management does involve organization. It does involve planning. It does involve prioritizing. It does involve monitoring what you're doing at each one of those steps. Okay. So also someone with time blindness can also tend to run late. Do you ever have friends where you just know that, they're just going to be late. If we say 7 o'clock, we'll tell them that,
6:45.
6:45, or sometimes, and also sometimes the whole running late thing is also cultural. It can be cultural. Like I come from a culture where we have what's called Indian Standard Time. So if we have a party, like that's starting at 7, no, that it's not starting at 7. I will be lucky if we're eating appetizers by 8, Okay. So sometimes it's tied to that culture that can, it's tied to that culture, but can also spill into other parts of your life.
Okay.
It may be acceptable to be fashionably late to a party. It is not acceptable to be late to a meeting or, to
A
class
Zoom.
or Zoom, etc. Exactly.
So there are also social skills involved.
Absolutely. And to ask yourself and to really monitor yourself all along the way. Like, is it appropriate, for me to be, I tell my clients, if it's a professional thing or an academic thing, if you are on time, you're already late. So plan for that. Okay. And then also procrastination is another symptom of people who suffer from time blindness, and also lack of follow through because you're rushing. There's a sense of just rushing. So the follow through kind of falls to the wayside. And then that can also impact productivity and the actual work that you want to do with integrity.
So what if you are listening to this going, ooh, maybe I have time blindness? What does someone do?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So the first, acknowledge it. Okay, Acknowledge it and say out loud to yourself or write it down somewhere that I want to understand how to be more aware of time. Okay, so time, we want to build those time awareness skills. And how do we do that? We start with making time more predictable. Okay, because think about it. If time is invisible or unreliable in your mind, then the strategies have to be externalized, right? Because if you can't rely on time to measure time in your mind, then what do we have to do? We have to find a way to use the resources around us, okay? And so let's start with building that time awareness, okay? Number 1, practice your estimation skills, okay? So I often tell my clients, how long do you think this task will take you? Okay, write it down in parentheses how long you think it'll take you. So for example, I have a math worksheet to do. Okay, I think that'll take me 10 minutes. Okay, great. Let's do the math worksheet either in here or on your own. And I want you to time yourself how long it took you to take it. And then look at the difference. And if you do that enough times, find a pattern for what the difference is between your perceived time estimation and the actual time estimation. Okay, you're bringing that to your awareness. So you can make this into a game. It can be fun, especially for the younger kids. Like, oh, how long do you think it's going to take us to get to Grandma's house? I don't know, 2 minutes, okay, 5 minutes, whatever. When in reality, Grandma lives in the city, and it doesn't take 2 to 5 minutes, So anyway, you can do this at any age, really. So practice those time estimation skills. Write down what you perceive, how long a task will take you, and then how long it actually took you. Oftentimes I know people get lost in the shower, right? That's where I do a lot of my thinking, whatever. I'm like, I'm just going to take a 5-minute shower. My showers are never 5 minutes, right? So sometimes I'll say, okay, well, I'll play the music. If you've got like a radio proof or a waterproof radio or whatever, I'm giving myself 2 songs and then I got to get out of the shower, Yeah. So think about that. Think about how long your perceived time is and your actual time for whatever task it is, okay? That should help build your time awareness, and do that consistently, do that regularly, okay?
And I'll also just add, I do the exact same thing with my students.
Yeah.
Write down how long do you think it's going to take, and then I'll also do that as part of chunking. So if you have a huge research project, for example, take a piece of that and think about how long each of those is going to take.
Right, exactly. And that's right. So that's called maybe time blocking, or we'll talk about that. So let's talk about that, time blocking. So decide ahead of time what you're going to do when and commit to it. So for example, I'm going to brainstorm my idea for this thesis from 6 to 6:45. You're blocking that particular time out of your day for that specific task. So is there anything this week that you two or either one of you need to time block for?
So yeah, I do have something I need to do this week, actually. I need to shop for a birthday present.
Okay, you need to shop for a birthday present. And is that something you've been putting off? Or is that just something because of the weather, it's cold and you don't know?
Exactly. And I always think I want to walk around and just find something organically, and then the time is passing. So
Right.
I have to kind of make more of a plan for it.
Okay, so I would suggest you have a good idea of what type of gift you want to get this special person and commit to going shopping at a certain time and block that time for that specific task.
Yes.
Okay.
And you know what I've discovered recently is that I have to block time for the thinking. I didn't know that before. So if I have to think about what I want to get the person,
Yes.
that's one time, and then I can actually go do the thing.
Yes, and planning things out definitely helps your time management skills.
100%.
So think about the gift that you want to get your person. Think about what stores can deliver that gift, or not deliver literally, but help you
Can come
find that
through
gift.
with it.
Yeah, exactly. Follow through with that. Yes, and so think about it and have some ideas, and then go specifically to those stores that can meet that need and block out that time to do that.
Well, and you probably
Okay.
need to block the travel time too.
Exactly.
That's
Absolutely.
the other thing. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it'll only take me a second to pick this up.
Absolutely.
But you forget that it's 10 minutes to get to the store, 5 minutes to walk to the store from the car.
Look for parking, if all
Right.
that kind of stuff.
So-
So think about things that can come up. We call those interferences or buffers.
Okay.
Yeah, think about those buffers. So, Kay, what about you? What do
I
you wanna-
need to finish a chapter for the book that I'm writing.
Wonderful. Okay. And about how long do you want to devote this week to that chapter writing?
Probably 3 hours.
Okay. And remember, 3 hours is a long time. You want to take breaks in between and all of that and manage your time
Right.
so
And
that you
I
can be
was
effective and
thinking
efficient.
maybe not 3 hours back to back because
Mhm.
I have a very short attention span.
Uh-huh.
So I thought maybe like 3 1-hour chunks.
3 1-hour chunks on different days
On
or different times?
Different days or different times.
Okay.
Either one.
Okay.
But I need to commit to actually putting those on my calendar.
Yeah. And so we talked about last time, our last episode on executive functioning, we talked about organization and using those planners. So I would today get out your planner and commit and time block 3 chunks, 1 hour at a time for you to work on your book chapter. And if you know what you're writing about, if you have an outline,
Mhm.
ready to go, that's going to help with initiating your task.
Perfect.
Right?
Yep. So what happens? I mean, you alluded to it just a second ago, but being that I want to write, I'm doing the podcast, I have my clients, I also have family and
Mhm.
friends who sometimes like to call, and it might be during one of my time blocks. What do I do when that happens?
Mm.
Yeah, that's called life. That's called things happen. And as beautiful as a plan you have and as committed as you can, want to be, and you have it written down, you have to plan for those buffers. So if something comes up that is of higher priority, like, someone gets sick, or, we all look, if we have an aging parent, or one of our kids called from school, or we have a client in crisis, priority sets in, right?
Mhm.
So then you readjust. Part of also having strong executive functioning skills is having that mental or cognitive flexibility. So substitute that 1 hour where you were interrupted,
Mhm.
for good or for bad, whatever reason, and then you find another time that suits your needs.
Interesting. I think about some of the younger listeners or the parents of younger listeners,
Mhm.
and I will see clients working on something, and then their phone starts lighting up.
Mhm.
Text
Mhm.
messages, Snapchats, those types of things.
Yeah.
And they view those as a priority.
Oh,
And that ends up, I think, derailing them sometimes
Yeah.
from what maybe they ought to be focused on. So how do you get someone who may be addicted to the little tiny screen that's in front of them?
Mm.
right. So if we want to be efficient workers and we want to do, I keep using the word integrity and value, right?
Mhm.
If you want to do your homework or write that work report or whatever it is that you're working on, if you want to do it with high value and integrity, distractions are going to happen. Some are within our control, some are beyond our control,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
The phone in front of you is within our control. And if you know that that's a distraction, you have a choice to make. Put it in the other room. Because here's the thing, especially if you're a student, I'm talking to my teens and young adults, college students out there, sharing your attention when our brains are still growing is not a great way to show up with integrity for whatever you're working on. So it comes down to where's your value system. It comes down to making the right decision. And the phone's not going anywhere. If you put it in the other room where it's out of sight, out of mind, when you take your break, go check your phone. It's still going to be there. So to answer your question, I would say to especially my young ones out there is make the right choice so that you are always showing up with a strong value system. And if your distractions are becoming too distracting and you can't, really you don't have the capacity to share your attention and the stakes are high with whatever you're working on, get rid of the distractions that you can get rid of.
Perfect.
Temporarily. Yeah. Temporarily, okay?
So question there. What if, and I've heard this from several of my students, what if you're multitasking?
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's the way you work best, like texting your friends and the show on in the background, and that's how you really focus.
Okay. Well, I would challenge that thinking and say, do you really best focus that way, or is that really the way that you feel like you're staying most engaged? Mm-hmm. And I would reframe the question to, what is my goal here? What is my goal here? Is my goal here to do it all in this time span of, 30 minutes? Is it to keep in touch with my friends and to finish my Netflix episode and to write my paper? Is that all something that I can do well? If the answer is yes, then I would say you have a super brain, and I would be really surprised at that. That doesn't mean the Netflix episode goes away. That doesn't mean the phone goes away. What that means is there's a time and a place for all of that. So you really want to prioritize, which is another part of our executive skills, is we want to prioritize properly what is in front of us. So I would say, right now, don't multitask. Yeah. I mean, now if you're multitasking, you're listening to the radio and you're folding your laundry and maybe answering an email on your phone, okay, that's a little different. The stakes there may not be so high. But if it is work-related, academic-related, make that the priority. Okay, so the other thing I think that's really important for people who experience time blindness is you got to make time visual. Because if you can't see time passing, if you see time passing, it's going to be harder to ignore. Okay. So there are things like countdown timers or even like your iPhone. Make time such that you can see it. If there's a way to make it colorful, I know there's this wonderful website called timetimer.com, and they make both big and small visual timers for people that really need to see the passage of time. Okay, like you can set it for 30 minutes and it's nice and big and red, and as time passes, it becomes less and less red. Okay, so that's just an example. Mm-hmm. So make it visible, make it something that's tangible. Okay.
Got it.
All right. The other thing is, Ruth and you and I have talked about this. It's called the Pomodoro technique.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is such a, Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. Let me explain what it is first, and I'll tie it back to the tomato. The Pomodoro technique is, pick the task that you want to do, work on the task, or allot a certain amount of time to that task, take a 5 to 7 minute break, and then restart, and just keep doing that on a loop, okay? So, for example, I want to work on you want to work on your book, okay? So, you can set up a time, that you're going to work on your book and whatever specific tasks you have related to the book for 45 minutes, okay, in your office. And 45 minutes is a long time because you're using a lot of mental capacity there. So maybe 45 minutes, you can decide if that's too long or not. Okay. What I'm going to let you allot the time. How long would you want to work on it for? I know earlier we said an hour, but
I can do 30-minute chunks.
Okay, perfect.
Let's do 30 minutes.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I think that's a really good number. So you'll work on your book for 30 minutes, and then you'll take a break. And then you'll even think about what you want to do for that break so you don't get so sucked in to a break. Break should be more than, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 12, 15 if, you really have to get something else done, okay? But think about what you want to do for that break too. Okay. Whether it's, I'll just go check my emails. It really should involve getting up, moving. You want to, and even maybe leaving the room that you're in if you can. Okay.
Take a quick dog walk.
That is
up and down.
That's a great one.
Up and down the street.
That is perfect because you're getting the fresh air. You're moving. You're in a different environment than the work environment. And the reason that that's important to do is because it re-regulates our body. Our minds and our body work together. So we want to re-regulate, and we want to really take an actual break that feels like a break, not just sitting there and opening up another screen or opening up another window and doing, a different type of work. That's not really a break. Okay.
It's funny listening to this.
Yeah.
And we've had countless conversations over the last years. Taking a break, I never schedule breaks.
Really?
I don't schedule breaks.
Oh,
I know
helps
people
so much.
I know people say to take them.
Yeah.
And so I think that going to the bathroom is a break. Or, or emptying the dishwasher is a break. And that's so it's a break from what I was doing, but I'm still doing something that I perceive to potentially be more necessary.
You're still kind of in the grind.
To me, another
more work. Right. Well, okay. So it's not a pleasurable break, but it's still a break.
Yeah. But I don't even schedule those. I'm just saying they happen naturally. Do you know what I mean? And now I'm listening to this going, oh, well, that's pretty basic. Like, why haven't I scheduled breaks? And people talk about them all the time. So now, I have my little aha moment here. So thank you.
Yeah. And you can, get a snack. I worked with a client recently and he said to me, he's like, but what if I don't need a break? What if I'm locked in to what I'm doing and it's been over an hour and I'm fine? And I said, well, it may seem like you're fine and that's great that you're locked in, but boy, are you using a lot of mental energy in that large amount of time, and be ready for a mental fatigue crash. And we don't want that to happen. Okay.
Right.
And the fact is, or the truth is that if you were so locked in for that hour and a half or whatever it was, you're probably going to be able to get re-locked in after you take a break and your integrity will be better. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. So take the and why is it called the Pomodoro? You have any idea, Ruth, why it's called the Pomodoro technique?
I do actually.
Oh, you do. You tell the story.
So it's Italian, which is funny because it's a Japanese method, right? But Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomato, and so when you write this out visually, you're supposed to block out your time in chunks. So you'll have maybe a 20 or 30 minute chunk of work time, and that'll be colored in red. And then you have like a 5 or 10 minute break, and that'll be in green. So it's like the red is the tomato, and the green is like the little leaves on top of it.
Yeah.
Funny.
So that's our little Pomodoro fact there for you. Okay. And then the other thing is pair time with an action. So for example, when the alarm rings, I'll open up my laptop. Okay. When the song is over, I'm going to start to fold the clothes. That is, by the way, my least favorite chore is folding the clothes. I don't mind doing the laundry. I can push a couple of buttons on the machine.
Yeah.
But it is the folding of the laundry.
It's so tedious.
I have to really rev myself up for that. So I have to say to myself, okay, when this song is over, I'm gonna continue to listen to my music or my playlist, but when this particular song is over, I'm going to go and grab the clothes and start folding them or start sorting them, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Or while my coffee brews, I'm going to review my to-do list. So what you're doing is you're pairing time with an action. Okay. And then there's also anchoring time to known events. So linking a task to a predictable time marker, like after dinner, I am going to email my teacher and follow up, or when I get home from practice, I'll allow myself 15 minutes of chill time before I start my homework. Okay. So you're anchoring that time to an actual event. Okay. And then back to our point that we talked about earlier, whenever you're planning something, whenever you are thinking about how much time to allot to a specific task or activity, plan for those buffers, weather, traffic, getting calls, that you didn't plan for, getting things ready. People will say, like my clients will say, oh, practice starts at 7. Okay, well, let's plan backwards. What time are you leaving? How long is it going to take you to plan, to get your gear ready and in the car, and, fill up your water bottle. You got to think about all those things when you are planning your time. Okay? And then reflect on all of that.
Continuous improvement, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Continuous improvement. And so if there's one thing I hope you guys take away from this episode, it's this. Struggling with time doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that time isn't showing up clearly in your mind. When time feels invisible, the answer isn't more discipline, it's more support. So externalize those supports and use those resources around you. So instead of blaming yourself, start experimenting with ways to make time visible, predictable, estimate your time, externalize it, because when time works with your brain, not against it, then everything gets easier. And we will have a link to the strategies on our website, netcollective.org.
If today's conversation resonated with you, please share this episode with anyone who may need it and follow us at netcollective.org or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss what's next.
We are N.E.T Collective.
Navigating everything together, one conversation at a time. Thanks for listening.